estimated that almost every 34 seconds somebody dies from a heart-related cardiovascular issue. So it's 1 in 5. It's getting higher every year. As you can see on this map, Alabama is one of the more red states of increased risk of heart disease. It's kind of in the center of these states. And as we look at other maps, we'll see other overlaying issues. So as you can see, the statistics are not in our favor, so we really need to take serious action to be aware of the earliest warning signs of heart disease and how to address those and support our health to prevent heart disease. It's also known as the silent killer, and because of it doesn't give us much warning. Many people just suddenly have a pain in their chest or their left arm, or they may have a headache, and the next thing they know, their heart goes into an attack, which is basically like a serious cramp feeling. And many ethnicities are affected from this, but as you can see on this chart, it's not limited to one demographic. So some of the things that related to blood pressure and heart health and blood vessel health, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, are kind of the things that you mostly hear in the news and the media and advertisements and what the doctor will often discuss. Unfortunately, many ways that doctors look at things is they're just reverting to medication, but what people eat is a big part in these underlying conditions. More so diabetes than and obesity than it is the bad oil choices. Even though the bad oil choices are a contributing factor, our body has a way of actually restricting what gets taken through the digestive tract and into the bloodstream. But there are a lot of components to the hypertension and the way the muscle of the heart pumps and what we can do and how we can take better action. But if your blood pressure is often over 140/90, you really need to pay more attention to your blood pressure and manage that. And I'll get into some more of the things that can help manage blood pressure more naturally. Then the cholesterol, there's the low density lipid proteins, and really if your doctor will order other subcategories, I didn't list those here, but it's very low. It'd be this would be LDL there, but then there's VLDL, and sometimes they use another abbreviation. They call it, but they may say small instead of very little. But there's a subcategory of the LDL, and then the HDL is considered the good cholesterol, and then triglycerides are in the cholesterol panel, but they're really the results of sugar in the diet or starches and carbs, and then total cholesterol. So our healthcare industry and the drug industry have kind of fabricated a storyline that if a cholesterol number is at a certain number, then a blockage is certain to happen, and that's not very true. I'll get into that in a little more. There's several tips to helping manage cholesterol. It is important, but it doesn't have to be as low as many are advertising or espousing that it needs to be. So there's several things that you can do. Of course, exercise is a big part of that, being mobile and moving, and dietary supplements, increasing your fiber is a big part, and then being aware of the more obvious, like fried foods are the worst culprit, and many baked items depending on the volume, but you should have very few baked items and literally very little bread in our diet. The food pyramid is actually upside down. It's the biggest part on the food pyramid illustrates grains, and we really need to have little grains because they're really starches is what they are, and most of it's over processed food. if you have, it depends on the grain, but most people are eating white bread or pastas or things that are simple carbohydrates. So we want to be more complex carbohydrates. Then there's supplements. A real well-known one is red yeast rice, and it's in some of our formulas. This is red yeast rice. And then we have a great formula called lipid factors, and it has more group of things that are for lowering cholesterol and helping that cholesterol level. Then there's good oils. There's lots of different types of essential fatty acids. If you can eat free wild-caught fish on some frequency, like ocean, there's like Destin Connections, a local fish market, and sometimes your supermarket will have the quality of fish that is really good for you. You don't want farm-raised fish. And then there's other things that are nuts and seeds that you can get your essential fatty acids from, like flaxseed oil or chia seeds or currants, and quality olive oil. Even algae produces certain essential fatty acids that are good for heart health. And then there's hemp oil and coconut oil that could help as well. So when you look at supplements, you want to read labels carefully, not have any fillers or colors or glycerin, other ingredients that are in there. Fish oils are part of that good cholesterol mix, and there's even prescription grade fish oils that a doctor may prescribe to help raise the good cholesterol. And there's a lot of benefits to having these good oils because it can help lower that bad triglyceride number, which is that sugar number that sugar turned to an oil. And there's studies on how fish oils improve mental health and can reduce depression and many other issues. So there's lots of research validating that the fish oils can reduce heart disease, and they can help with other types of inflammation in the body, like arthritis or osteoarthritis. And then they're good for the brain, good for vision health. So often the case with supplementation, you have to get away from thinking the same way you do in the medication, taking a pill. When medications, you're told you have this disease, you take this pill. In natural supplementation, it's like going to a salad bar with lots of choices. Every nutrient can work on almost every organ in the body. And so it's raising your health standard. It's not targeting a single item. And so that's a big kind of paradox between medicine and supplementation or diet. You're working on the entire body at one time, raising your level of health. And it's because you didn't keep your level of health at some level that healthcare has identified a disease, and then they medicate that disease. With consistent improvements in diet, hydration, and supplementation where your diet don't provide enough, then many diseases dissipate or fade away, including heart disease. So but one of the most common supplements in the mix for good levels is the fish oils. Another common one is garlic. It has a lot of clinical research on lowering, and you can eat more garlic. You can eat other herbs like Italian herbs. We think of like parsley or oregano. There's a lot of different herbs that can help. And then more vitamin C and bioflavonoids can do a lot to help the integrity of the blood vessels, because vitamin C helps the blood vessels. It helps connective tissue, and it helps give tissue more stretchability. So the vitamin C in the form of bioflavonoids help a lot. There's a specialized type of bioflavonoid called from bergamot. It's a small little like orange, and there's a lot of clinical research on how that improves blood vessel health. So it's not just the heart that we're concerned about, it's the blood vessels in and around the heart and literally all the blood vessels throughout the body. But the bigger organs have larger blood vessels, like the liver and the lungs. So again, in natural health, we don't compartmentalize or laser in on one organ. We look at the entire body all the time. The next biggest contributing factor to heart disease and blood vessel related diseases is that blood sugar. And this is another chart. If you remember the first chart with a number of people, it showed this Southern America, U.S., Alabama's on that higher incidence of obesity, and it was on the higher list of heart disease. So there's a real correlation between being overweight and having more likelihood of having heart disease. So this shows that we got to get healthier, get a healthier weight, and manage our metabolisms better. And if our foods don't include enough nutrition, then we need to supplement where the food doesn't have that. Other statistics about obesity is also tied to other status, like education levels and income levels. People who are more educated and often then they usually have a better income, they often have a better weight as well. So a lot of inexpensive food, unfortunately, is some of the worst food for us. And so that's why people often have that obesity because of that. Then we want to learn better eating habits, better guidelines for eating, watch the sugars, watch the starches, and eat more fresh vegetables, and leaner meats are a big part of that, and avoiding the trans fats. This is another map of ethnicity and prevalence in these diabetes and heart disease, and you can see it's still, Alabama's one of those states that, and I've kind of highlighted it down here, the lack of activity. We're too sedentary, and we don't get out and move enough. The average person has a desk job, or they go home and sit in front of a TV or a computer. They're too sedentary. So heart disease, the coronary artery disease, that's what perpetuates the actual heart attack. The muscle in the heart basically goes into a cramp or a spasm. If you've ever had a leg cramp and know how hard that feels, when the heart just basically gives up and it can't relax and contract and go through its motion, that's actual heart attack. So there's different, depending on the nuances of where it is in the heart, there can be different specific names to that, but it's still in the end either the blood vessel or artery diseases. Arteries are where the blood from the lungs come that have this red blood, and then the blue blood is the returning from the body in veins. Again, every 40 seconds or so, somebody's having a heart attack. So it's just too often. And many people that have that heart attack experience that piercing chest pain or the numbness down their arm, shortness of breath, maybe feeling a nausea, lightheaded. It's good to know these early signs, and that's when something like the aspirin is applicable, to take that and then get your blood pressure checked and get the data on what's going on. But you want to know as soon as possible the different aspects of the heart disease and what's happening to you and what you can do to control that. Our healthcare industry, there's a video on YouTube, and the man that produced it, his name's Ivan Cummings, and it's called The Widowmaker. And in that video, he interviews several people that had had some type of heart event, coronary, either a heart attack or a stroke or something. And what he outlines in that video is how the inventor of the stent back in the early 80s developed the first stent protocols, and then how that got into production. And when healthcare sees a crisis and they see a lot of people dying of something, they want to intervene quickly and have a solution. And then if it's a medical device, that's even better. And when they saw the population as a whole was not taking their own personal actions in reversing heart disease, the stent sales skyrocketed, of course, and doctors that are cardiologists that perform stent surgeons, some of them earn over $3 million a year putting stents in one after another every day. And but the public still doesn't know answers that they can do. And why did this time in American culture, for example, why are heart attacks increasing and very common? So there's still not a lot of public information, even though if they catch you at the right moment, they can put a stent in and prop up the vein. If you don't know what a stent is, it's basically a type of spring that is like a tube, then it's closed, and then when they get it in a place where they want it in the artery, they they can go up through different veins in the leg or arteries, and they can get to where, and they use imaging to see where it's going, and then they can open it, and then that opens that blood vessel. But the point is, it only opens the 1/8 of an inch long area that the stent was, which was the most critical area, but it doesn't fix anything else, and it doesn't clean any arteries anywhere. It only saves you so blood can now go through a very restricted area that they found. With natural supplements, we have vitamin K2. There's several kind of K vitamins. There's K1, there's K2, and K3, and K2 can be in the MK7 form or the MK4 form, and either one's fine. Some research says that MK7 has a longer shelf life, and so it maintains longer activity. The point is, the K2 helps reassign calcium, and as much as the healthcare industry would like to think you need to take a cholesterol drug because that's what makes plaque, it's not the whole story. What builds up on the artery wall is the combination of several things. The artery wall is comprised of, the plaque is not only cholesterol, it's calcium, and it's microscopic scarring. The lining to the wall of the blood vessels is actually, if you've ever caught a fish right out of the water and it's slippery, it's going to slide out of your hands. They've learned about 10 years ago that the lining to the walls of the arteries have a protein that's like the fish slipperiness. And one of these supplements, that's what it does, is improves how your body makes that so that the blood can flow past. That's how the fish can swim easier, because it's slippery. And the supplement improves the slipperiness in your blood vessels, so it improves that. Plus it also helps repair. Then you can have all types of different infections. Older people are often told when they go to a dentist that they need to take an antibiotic when they have their teeth cleaned. And the reason is that different bacteria that live on your teeth that create the plaque and the tartar on your teeth, those are different bacteria that can live there. But when flossing occurs, you could be bleeding in the gums, and that bacteria can get into the bloodstream, and it can get into the heart, and it can cause different heart disease like pericarditis. So that's why they give you an antibiotic if you have that, particularly older people. But you can also have other blood infections through viral or even fungal issues can be part of what's creating irritation on the blood vessel wall, and that's another part. So there's several types of ways you can have infections that can go undetected that create basically a scab on the lining of the wall of the artery. Then cholesterol will layer on top of that to try to patch it so it can still be slippery. And then calcium can come along and build. And so there's several things building together. Just like building a brick wall or a brick column, it's several things that went together to make that happen. It wasn't just one item like bricks, or you see a brick wall, but it's mortar and bricks that made the wall. And so it's not just cholesterol. So so there's different kinds of infections, and they're difficult to detect. One of the bizarre symptoms of a blood infection is you'll actually get red spots under your fingernails, and you may actually look like you had bled on your fingers. It's a strange thing, but it can be a clue that there's a blood infection. So we want to keep the arteries clean, and we want to keep the heart where it can beat smoothly. One of the tests I do is called Smart Pulse, and it's just a little clip on your finger, and it chirps for a little while and beeps, and it takes 4 or 5 minutes, and it shows me a little graph of where the heart beats up, relaxes, beats again, and relaxes. And then I have another test that shows me heavy metals. It shows me your mineral levels, like 20 different minerals: calcium, magnesium, potassium, and then it shows me heavy metals. I often find people who have cadmium or lead or mercury, they'll often have something wrong with how their heart beats. Their pressure may be fine, but the heart's not very strong. And when we remove the heavy metals with heavy metal chelation processes, then we get the heart healthier in that process. Then the K2 and magnesium are really important. The K2, I'll usually start with 300 to 400 or more units of K2. K2 is hard to get in your diet. It's in it's a fat-soluble vitamin, so it's in really heavy butter. There's like names like Irish butter or ghee butter. Certain cheeses may have K2, but because of the calorie content and the fat content, some of those may not be in your typical meal plan. So the supplementation is really good. K1 is, and really, I don't know how they came up with K, and for all three of these, because K1 is nothing like K2. K1 is a blood clotter, so K1 will make your blood clot. So people who, at some point in their age, they may be on blood thinners, and the doctor says you can't have any K vitamins. They'll do what's called check your INR protein to see if your blood's thin enough. And that's what K1 concerns about, because it can thicken the blood. But K2 is entirely different. K2 deals basically with regulating calcium, and that's why it helps clean the calcium deposits in the blood vessels. K3 is actually a synthetic version of K1, and K3 is when a baby's born, they want to give a shot so that when they remove a clamp from the umbilical cord, the baby won't bleed at that location. So they go ahead and give him something to help him clot better. So K1 and K3 are basically the same. One's natural, one's synthetic. K2 works on calcium. The others work on blood clotting. But and blood clotting plays a part in heart disease, because if the heart muscle, say you've got these heavy metals or you're lacking enough magnesium, magnesium makes a muscle relax, and calcium makes a muscle constrict. So when you have too much calcium and not enough magnesium, the heart's doing, it does short beats, and it can't relax and give a full beat. And so it's kind of short, tense beats. And there's drugs called amlodipine, that's a calcium channel blocker, or Norvasc, and those help let something work, or it works around that over-calcification and lets the heart have that better relax. You know, if the doctor understood chemistry better and there wasn't such a stronghold of the drug industry, the doctor would just say magnesium taurate would be an excellent alternative. But that's not what we have. So, but that's why I put almost everyone on magnesium. It's one of the most commonly deficient minerals people have. And then diabetics have chromium, and thyroid issues also have iodine deficiencies. But we use magnesium to help the heart have a better beat and a better relaxation, and that's very good to help the heart not go into that heart attack, and the heart can heal. And then there's herbs like hawthorn is really good for the heart muscle itself to help the heart be healthy. And then the blood vessels, we want to keep those clean and healthy. And to do that, not only do the application of the K2 and the magnesium help at the location as the blood passes by the blood vessels where there's possible buildup, then the circulation depends on the gut, the liver, the intestinal tract on eliminating these excess fats and reassigning calcium to its right location. And then the other nutrients, as I mentioned briefly, is types of vitamin C called bioflavonoids, and those. Then there's supplements. This is called Cardio 911. We have some other things like this as well. What this does is it has citrulline and arginine. Those are proteins, and they a scientist got a Nobel Prize for science, I think in 1990, for identifying the nitric oxide mechanism. And so some people may have heard or seen older people, they have a nitroglycerin pill that they could take if they feel like they're having a heart attack, because what that does, the nitroglycerin causes cardiac tissue to relax really well. And so taking something that's going to donate things that support the nitric oxide pathway help the heart have the capacity to be better at relaxing the heart, so it's not so tight, because that ultimately a heart attack is a muscle spasm. Then there's other forms. This is another with methylfolate and citrulline and B12. And your B vitamins play a part in how the blood vessels also work in the nervous system. And blood pressure, keeping that blood pressure below 130 is important, and stress can make you have higher blood pressures, and B vitamins play a big part in relaxing the body so that it can also not only mechanically with the magnesium, but the signals to the heart. If your body feels like you've got to jump up and run somewhere, your heart's going to be kind of already kind of overworked. So the keeping B vitamins in your system are really important. And when I talked about the digestive issues a few weeks ago, if you're on acid blockers, you're not going to be pulling minerals such as magnesium out of your foods. You're not going to be pulling B vitamins out of your foods. And so you're not going to get those resources. So it's important. Then a person would need to take an enzyme to digest their food more completely. Also with the blockage, we can do enzymes. So enzymes can be used in different ways. They can digest your food, but they can be taken away from food for more specific applications. And so enzymes can also help, that are types of enzymes that dissolve proteins, fats, and help clear the blockage faster. Then I have a device that is in the herb shop called the Beamer. It's kind of a strange name, but it's a technology called pulse electromagnetic field. And then I have another device called the Cloud that's a pulse electromagnetic field that's a newer technology of frequencies. But what they both do is help you move, to calm you down, and they help blood flow. The Beamer improves circulation. So the Beamer makes the blood vessels almost have like a little workout, and then where there is restriction, it helps move the blood through the blood vessels faster. And that helps get circulation, particularly in what's called your microcirculation, the smallest blood vessels. I had a lady that was scheduled to have a leg amputated. She'd already had her first leg amputated, and she really didn't want to lose her second leg. It wasn't diabetes and it wasn't high blood pressure. She just had a vascular disease, a blood vessel disease. And I said, well, Sarah, come on in and sit in this chair as many days a week as you can. And she came 3 days in a row, and then she went to Birmingham to her specialist, and they were going to look at her and make a decision to take her leg off. And she comes back the next week, and she said, I'm not going to lose my leg. I'm going to be able to keep my leg. So just something as simple as sitting in a chair 40 minutes 3 times saved her leg. So she took a few supplements, but the point is that the chair moves the blood through kind of restricted areas where there's inflammation. We don't know until conventional medicine waits until you have something called deep vein thrombosis or other vascular things that hurt. And so we've got to, natural health, we don't wait till we hurt, we wait until we can't perform or reach a higher goal. That's a different mindset in natural health. I mean, we can fix a lot of kind of on-the-moment problems, but that's not really our theme and purpose. Our purpose is to give you the best wellness. It's kind of like a horse that shows up at a stable at the racetrack or the horse that wins the race. You want to put your money on the horse that wins the race. So we're trying to make everybody winners at their health. And I think that's what God wants us to have, that body, to have our frame of mind, our clarity, and our capacity to exceed everything He's got for us. So, in addition to, to kind of recap, magnesium is really important for blood vessel health. Antioxidants like vitamin C. If you can eat an orange or a citrus fruit every day, that'd be really great. The good thing about citrus is you want to peel, you want to eat as much of the rind or the white part as you can stand. I know it's not sweet and pretty, but it holds the fruit together, and it's what will hold our body together too. And so it's really good for you. And then salt's kind of a double-edged sword. So it really depends on if you don't salt at all. What happens is doctors tell people to not take any salt. What you really need, it's kind of like the calcium channel blocker and the magnesium story. If you just took more magnesium, you wouldn't need the calcium channel blocker. The point is, if you like salt, you probably need to supplement with potassium. What doctors will do is give you a diuretic, and diuretic will make you lose water, but you lose potassium. So then they give you a potassium-sparing diuretic. Well, if they just give you potassium on the front end, but the potassium that's in the drugstore is potassium chloride, which almost doesn't do anything for you. You need other forms of potassium, like potassium bicarbonate and potassium glycinate. They're using the wrong form, so they almost sabotage themselves when it comes to a name of something that sounds like a vitamin or a mineral, because they use the wrong one. So, but potassium will help get off water, but herbs like parsley will also help displace excess water. I remember getting a phone call, it's been a long time ago, we were on the boulevard then, and in the store across from Home Depot, and this lady calls and said her pressure's high, and what are some of the things she could do? And I said, well, there's capsicum, which is hot pepper, there's garlic, and there's parsley, there's hawthorn. These are all things that are good for the heart. And I told her the price of those things, and she said, I don't even think I can get down to the bus to get there. And I said, well, do you have any spices in the house, like when you cook? And she says, I think I do. And I said, can you look for parsley? It's kind of common, or garlic. And I could hear bottles falling. And she said, oh, I found the parsley. And I said, well, put a tablespoon of that in water, and then just add water to it. When you don't have any flavor, then do it again later in the day. But go through like 4 cups of hot tea, parsley tea. Well, she called me 2 days later and said her pressure had gone down and she was fine. So just with something as simple as parsley. So there, God put these plants on right here for us. He didn't put a drugstore in the Garden of Eden. So it's just up to you. But we often eat ourselves or sit too sedentary or do a variety of things that gets us in that crisis. And there's a business model that's ready to handle a crisis, which is good, but let's be a little realistic. But don't ignore the crisis either. I was listening to K-Love today, and somebody was like, I need to go jog, but I'm going to eat this donut first, You know, so it's like sometimes our themes. So pray that your direction is of one direction and one mind, so that you're not confused in your direction. So, but that's all I have for heart disease. If you have any questions or comments, I'll be glad to elaborate.
Thank you so much. Okay, so you're saying that we can do all of this stuff and take all these supplements, but if we don't exercise, we're missing it. So that needs to be added to our regimen. Exercise. We need to move.
And you start where you can start.
Yes.
I mean, if it's walking to the corner and back, you know, once a week or twice a week, and keeping measurements of your like diary or a journal, you know, just walking down the hall in your house. Okay, I'm just gonna not be, you know, I'm just gonna walk 6 times back and forth, or just say I'm not gonna have the television on unless it's like, you know, a church service. You know, it's just, I'm gonna do something. You know, some of our chores, you know, ironing clothes and things. A lot. Our society's changed a lot of things. So there's a lot of things that we could get back to that keep us busy. And then I'm sure the church has lots of projects people could be involved in that get them off the sofa.
Yes. Yes. Any questions?
Can you speak to using dark leafy green vegetables, how some doctors will tell people on blood thinners not to consume those if they're on blood thinners? Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
So a common blood thinner is Coumadin or warfarin, and when a person's on those, they have 2 labs, either an INR or protein level, and that's how thick the blood is or how fast it'll clot. And so if what they ask is somebody to not have green leafy vegetables, what I say is you can have moderation. One way to manage that is to be very consistent. So if it's like one day it's like spinach and another day it's green beans and another day it's broccoli, but it's not much, then you can still have those. Because those green leafy vegetables have a lot of K2, which isn't K1, they also have K1, but they also have K2, and they actually can help with calcium and strong bones and other things. So I know my mother-in-law had a heart valve replacement, and she had to be on the Coumadin and the warfarin. And it was before Eliquis and that class of drug was put to market. So later in her life, her backbone looked, I mean, I'm sorry, it looked like something out of a horror movie. I mean, it was just like curved and twisted, and she had been like 5'7", but at her passing, she was barely 4'6". I mean, she'd lost a foot in height, and that's because the bones disintegrated, and partly due because of those blood thinners, because she lived to be 93, and she'd had the bypass surgery when she was 60. I mean, the heart valve replacement when she was 60. So K vitamins, K in our diet's important. I don't like the Eliquis either. I don't like those class drugs either. There's Xarelto, because there's no off switch. If they've overdosed it, there's not something like the antidote. If you started bleeding, like if you had a nosebleed or cut yourself and you're on Coumadin or warfarin, you could go eat the spinach and you would be able to clot, because that's what you needed. It's disabling the K1. But with Eliquis or Xarelto, it's an enzyme pathway that there's not something you can do to turn it off. It just has to wear off. Yes. So that's something else that reminds me I wanted to say is when the heart starts to spasm, it can be several reasons, but it's arrhythmia. It's not a good rhythm, and so it's like, you know, if you're exercising and you've done push-ups or you've worked your legs and one more time you're kind of wobbly, shaky, or the day after you exercise you notice little muscle spasms. Well, when our heart doesn't work well, if it spasms, then it creates turbulence, and that turbulence creates a clot to happen. It activates a chain reaction that creates a clot. And there's a medical procedure called the Watchman, where they kind of trim part of the heart down on the inside and make it where that's not supposed to happen, but I still have people where that's happened. The handout I gave you is on a stem cell patch. It's not on that article, but there's a study where they took people that put this patch on every day on the back of their neck, a new one every day, and for 6 months, and they did heart studies before they started and 6 months into it, and their heart had changed as if it was 8 years younger. So that made their heart healthier just putting on a patch every day. So anybody with heart disease or threatening or pending issues, that's really important. What else?
You said the cholesterol number that they use to determine if our cholesterol is high or low is not a good model?
Right. So the cholesterol model is they want you to be on a cholesterol-related drug to get your cholesterol. Usually they'll start talking about getting you below 200. But cholesterol is it's a sterol. It's kind of like an oil, and all hormones are sterols. So if you lower cholesterol, you lower hormones. Actually, it was reported that certain prison systems in certain states gave all inmates cholesterol-lowering drugs because it lowered testosterone, so they would make them less aggressive. So if your guy wants testosterone, the statin drugs are counterproductive.
What number is, I know you said 200.
So everybody's different. And another reason I don't like cholesterol drugs is because the LDL is really, it's really the very low LDL is the more accurate sub number. But LDL's the bad cholesterol, and you can't, what happens is that cholesterol lowers the easy things to lower. It lowers the total, and it actually will lower the good, and then it might pull some of the LDL down, and then it doesn't work too good on triglycerides. So they go, well, we'll just keep lowering it, because they lose sight on what the real objective is. And their objective isn't wellness, it's a hypothetical, if you have a cholesterol number, you won't have a blockage. But for example, President Bill Clinton, after being on statin drugs for decades, had a heart attack because it didn't stop a blockage. It didn't stop the wrong thing from happening. So, I mean, that's like saying they don't work. They don't work at what they're supposed to be. So they're touted as preventing a heart attack or a blockage, and something as simple as magnesium and K2 can do a lot more in that direction than a cholesterol drug.
You mean like a statin?
Mm-hmm.
Can you speak from your perspective, the increase that we're seeing in sudden cardiac attacks, especially in our younger folk? What do you think are some of the things that are contributing to that?
Well, the health of the parents, unfortunately, the bad diets have changed the genetic code. So, but back in the 1950s in the Korean War, they could, in autopsies, identify American soldiers from Korean soldiers by looking at their blood vessels. So it goes back that far to knowing how bad heart disease is and how generational it is. But you combine that with other factors, like the folic acid being converted to methylfolate plays a part, and many chemistry factors. The toxicity of our world makes our genetics mutate to their lower capacity. And so it accelerates the age process, or it shortens the lifespan. and it makes the body work worse. And then the lack of overall nutrients make the body worse. And unfortunately, there's a lot of empirical evidence that the COVID vaccines have had a big part in heart disease and blockages. Yes. He wants you to say it in the microphone. Just a minute.
There you go. Thank you.
Those Balance or Nature vitamins
Yes.
that they show on TV, what's with those?
So you're asking, what do I think about those, about Balance of Nature? There's several companies that have the fruits in one pill and the vegetables in another pill. Frankly, it's still an escape from doing the responsible thing of eating fruits and vegetables. So and they still, when I do some of the testing I do, some people are marginally better than the population, but a lot of people aren't. So it's still not enough as eating, like as simple as eating an orange every day, and when you run out of oranges, eat a tangerine or a citrus fruit. Some medications have a conflict with grapefruit, but just deliberately an apple a day keeps sweat away. So it's the real apple. It's not a freeze-dried apple in a pill. So it's still missing key things. It doesn't. Those products don't list their ingredients as far as a quantifiable ABC. So there's some use to them, but they're still incomplete and because they don't list them, it's hard to know why you didn't get what you needed. Did that answer your question? And then hydration is really important. We've talked about water a couple of times, and because one of the problems is the blood's too thick. So the hematocrits will show if you're not drinking enough water. So you want to drink plenty of water. The rule of thumb is to take your body weight, divide that in half, and that's the number of ounces you want to strive for every day. So that's a lot. And so that's one thing. If somebody says or feels like there's tightness in the chest, see if you can get them to drink some water. That'll thin the blood faster than anything because it dilutes it. But get them to a doctor. Because then they need critical care. Prevention hadn't been done, so now they're at the unprevented problem. You understand the difference? Prevention, crisis. So, what else?
Question about like grapefruit with blood pressure medicine. I didn't know that years ago, and I always like to eat grapefruit or drink grapefruit juice.
Mm-hmm.
And I found out the hard way. I got really sick one night, and then my oldest daughter said, "Didn't you know they don't mix?" I said, "No, I didn't, but I found out."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yes, you can't swallow certain medications with grapefruit, but you can have it in the same day, but just can't be kind of active in your body right when you take the medicine. It's not that many, but it is more likely a blood pressure medicine. And like antibiotics, you don't want to swallow them with milk. There's certain things, read labels. Talk to the pharmacist when you get a medication. Just ask if it's with food, without food, and if there's anything you should avoid when you take it. Because that's their specialty. And hopefully if you prevent well enough, you won't see a pharmacist very much. Well, again, I really enjoyed it, and I'm thankful for the opportunity.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about the natural things that you could do to make your blood more slippery.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of those?
Well, the more of the fish oils, like eating wild-caught fish, because of the oil content, you're going to get a lot more. So you think about the price of a high-end quality fish oil supplement, and you think, I know fish is expensive, but if you can eat, you want to talk to the butcher, and you want to find really fresh. You don't want farm raised, because farm raised, the fish couldn't swim anywhere. I mean, they didn't have any muscle, because so they're not they're just like lay around, you know. So they're lazy fish. So you don't want the champion fish that swam up the waterfall, you know, kind of fish. So you want that healthy fish. So, but the fish oil is a good way, and then avocado is a great way to get oils, and nuts and seeds. The tricky thing with nuts and seeds is you want them not roasted, fresh, unroasted, and you want to smell them, and you want to know what a rancid oil smells like. It kind of has a pungent, bad smell. So a lot of nuts are roasted and flavored and salted because they couldn't sell them as fresh, so they just put some sugar coating on them and resold them, and they weren't good for you. So.
You was talking about fish oil. Are you familiar with the product Carson cod liver oil, and would you recommend that or not as an
I think, well, I don't have it in front of me, but you don't want glycerin. It's a little tricky because there's a type of good glycerin, but most of these oils will add either color, a lower brand. If there's anything that looks like if you bought a bag of M&Ms, it would say like FCD yellow or R yellow. It would have a name of a code and a color. And if any vitamin has a color in it, then it's not a good vitamin. But then when it's an oil type thing, if it's got glycerin or soy oil, if it's got other oils with it, it's not, so they're weighing the total after. So it's got some of the fish oil and some of the oil, and what they're selling you is the total oil, but they're not telling you how much was the fish oil. The reason you're buying it was for the fish oil, but it's a little tricky labeling that they're trying to get around and put over on you.
better to stay away from it? If it's something say something other than cod liver oil.
Right, right. I mean, it could say like lemon. See, this one has lemon, but it's from mackerel and anchovies and salmon. So, so it's just, but the colors are the worst thing, and then other additives are in there.
If you eat nuts, is there like too many like in a day, or
Well,
are there types that are better than others?
I like to look at the blood type diet to make your nut selection, because like blood type O's, I'm an O, so cashews are not beneficial for O's, and almonds are. So, and I can tell a difference on how I feel the day after when I've eaten some cashews versus eating almonds. You want to chew really well until it's like ridiculous, because if there's any risk of diverticulitis, it'll aggravate that and create a whole nother problem. So you want to chew them really well, and preferably eat for your blood type on the nuts. And anything really, but the nuts, I know, seem to flare up inflammation if they're the wrong ones.
The blood, they know me. But the blood test that you have in your office, is it a prick of the finger, or is it a?
It's just a prick, like a blood sugar prick.
Okay, I'll come and get that. I was gonna give blood so I could get it tight, but I think I'll come get it.
Well, it's still good to give blood.
Oh yeah, that's true.
It could take a month to tell you, though. I think our test kits are about $11 for just the blood type. If I'm not busy, I'll do it for you.
No, I mean, if it's done.
Yes, it's an instant result. Yeah. It's a little, the kit is a little card with 4 circles and a little pipette to get water in, and then you put a little drop of water to hydrate these reagents, and then you prick the finger, and then you touch a dot and wipe the blood clean and wipe the finger clean, squeeze and get another drop of blood, touch the second drop, and then keep repeating that till you touched all 4 drops with a clean drop of blood, and there's a little stir, and then it separates. So depending on which ones separate, there's a little key to tell what blood type you are. Yeah, unless unless we hold the needle wrong and it doesn't go in, and then but yeah. No, I've had those, but it was such a low percentage of people. You're talking about the blood type. Mm-hmm. That it made a difference. Yeah, non-secretors. It's a subcategory of blood type related to the blood type diet, and whether you go by all the things on the list or there's exceptions. But I did interview one of the scientists that worked on the blood type research when we had our radio show in Austin, Texas. That was nearly 30 years ago. It's been a while. 25, maybe. Mm-hmm. It's a little tricky with the coconut oil because it is actually a triglyceride. So, so you definitely don't want to ingest coconut oil within 2 days of having blood work because it's going to more immediately raise the triglyceride levels. But it can actually help. It's an antifungal, so it has different properties and to help with that, and it helps the gut health, and it does help in the lipid matrix. But it's a little stretch, but it is a good oil. But it will raise the triglycerides, but it's not the triglycerides from sugar. It's medium chain triglycerides instead of long chain triglycerides. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's a problem, and I think like the avocados, I don't think are a problem. So you can actually mix the coconut oil with the avocados and make more of a guacamole softer. So, just don't have any cashews with it. Yes. Mm-hmm.
So people can put it on their skin and it's okay?
Mm-hmm. You can put it on toenail fungus.
The reason I ask because I see a lot of beauty products that just say no coconut, it doesn't have coconut oil in it like it's a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, there's some ways, anyway, there's the filtration. So the MCT oil is that they've isolated that part of the coconut oil. So it's not straight coconut oil because straight coconut oil is going to be solid at room temperature, and this is clear at room temperature. So, and you can actually cook with MCT oil. So.
So I can use my MCT oil.
Mm,
Thank
yes.
you. Praise the Lord. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
It's the form of the coconut oil. It's the good stuff in the coconut oil.
It's the medium chain triglycerides.
Yeah. I'm coming. You have that look on your face.
So about coconut oil, so you can or you should or should not use it to moisturize, I guess, your body.
No, for the skin application, I have an employee, Debbie Starr, that developed her own skincare line, and she has a bentonite clay mask that can help exfoliate and bring circulation to the skin, which helps the skin repair and heal and reduce wrinkles and fine lines. But it also, then the moisturizing part, she has a certain, like coconut oil that's been through a filtration process. So there's just raw coconut oil, and there's different levels of filtration of coconut oil. So impurities have been removed. So those are better if you've got one that's been cleared of its impurities.
Okay. Now, and then about blood pressure.
Mhm.
What did you say about the parsley again?
It's a mild diuretic, so it can get water fluid off your body, which can be part of why blood pressure's increased.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
He said make a parsley tea,
Yeah,
correct?
you can make a tea, or you can make a fresh parsley, chop it up and eat it. You can put it on a salad. Put it with your hummus.
And a lot of times with the diuretic, if you have a problem with kidney stones, they actually cause kidney stones. I have that problem. Yeah. Too much calcium.
Well, it could be too much, it could be candida, it could actually cause. Candida or Candia is a fungus, and its waste product is oxalates. And so the oxalates are what are more prominent in the kidney stone. Is it's calcium oxalate, not just calcium. And so, and then also coronary calcium could be the fungus gone systemic that made the oxalate. So there are urine tests that can measure that, but generally we just, the scan, my Cytoscan can tell me a lot about that and the direction to do with that. But I'm trying to think. I worked with somebody this morning. She had lots of medical records, and she had the oxalates in there, and she was high on her oxalates. And so, and she has polycystic kidney disease. You know, a lot of things, but yeah, it's a trick. It's a. I had a gentleman that kept having kidney stones, and then we worked on his diet and went on a low oxalate diet, and it stopped his kidney stones.
From your perspective, from what you do, how often do you find a correlation with fungi?
With what?
Fungus
Oh,
related to some of the coronary issues?
well, it's very common, and it's a kind of a newer discovery. Speaking of discoveries, I just met with Dr. Torrey Herring. He's over near Baptist East, kind of near the fire station. And he has a new, if anybody's got a Medicare patient or has Medicare insurance, he has a new test called Restore You. And what I like about that, it's a blood test, so you're not going to like it, but it's because they have a big needle. But it recommends like alpha lipoic acid, K2, resveratrol in the report. And so I've never seen a doctor's report even have K2 anywhere unless it's like a misspelled, or something. But so it's real exciting to see. And so he's referring his patients, because he goes, I don't know nothing about no vitamins, but I'll be glad to send them to you. So, but if you're looking for a doctor or you're getting their Medicare age, consider or ask your doctor for the U method lab test that's approved for Medicare. Because and I can leave these for a little while if anybody wants to. It's just a sample report. I can't leave them for good, but I can let anybody look at them if they want to ask a question.
Any other questions?
You're about to end?
Yes.
Would this be the end if no one else has questions? Okay. How many of you appreciate the wealth of knowledge God's given us for the last several months? And this guy, this man, I don't know if he ever sleeps. I think all he does is read. He just knows so very much. Isn't it amazing how men like Carl know a whole lot more than a whole lot of doctors? And we appreciate you and value you, and thank you so much. And of course, you know there are a whole lot more people watching you online. We have here, did you tell the story about how you got involved in health and your journey? Did you talk about that?
I don't think I did.
Would you?
Yeah. I grew up here in Montgomery, but I had allergies and asthma, and I just took things over the counter, or we go to a doctor. I did all those scratches and tests and shots. My mother, bless her heart, she was like, ugh. She barely could stab me to give me those allergy shots. And one time she went to my dad was a carpenter and a builder, and he had different saws, and they were made by Black & Decker. And she went to the pharmacy and said, I need those Black & Decker needles. It was B&D, but it wasn't Black & Decker. But so I grew up with these, having to have shots. But ultimately, I ended up through different jobs, and I was in Austin, Texas. And I had eaten at a restaurant out at the lake, and the water was polluted with the septic system, and there was a bacteria. And I got Shigella, and I went to the hospital and had to have IV fluids and IV antibiotics. And I asked the doctor, I said, I've lost 20 pounds, and I didn't have 20 pounds to lose, and what do I do? And he goes, just try something until it works. And he left the room, and a male nurse came in the room and said, don't tell anybody, but you need acidophilus. Yogurt's going to have it, but don't tell anybody. And so I was like, I just want to know what to do. And then as the years went by, the asthma was like asthma attacks and bronchitis, and it just kept coming more often. And then I started having headaches more often, and my energy level was just, I couldn't hardly climb stairs. I managed a 25-story high-rise in downtown Austin, and I just felt my health was declining very quickly. And I'd go to the doctor, and I'd say, and he was a deacon at my church, and I said, my health's declining, and I'm just like 28 or 30 years old, and I was like, I just want my health back. And I know you had a pill every time I came in for something, but what do I do to get better and get, no offense, I'd rather not see you. I'd rather just be healthy. And he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, you're a healthcare provider, and my health isn't real good, so how do you provide me to be healthier? And he goes, well, that's not what we do. We just manage what you come in with. And it wasn't long after that I, this little light goes on, but I was listening to a Saturday morning radio show on a Christian station, and it was a family talking about how they had started taking herbs and vitamins and drinking more water, and they cut out a variety of foods out of their routine and ate better. And the kids that had been asthmatic, that the asthma was like where they never knew when they were going to have to rush to the ER and have different shots, an EpiPen or something, and live on pins and needles wondering if it was their child's last day to live. But they said, after 3 to 6 months of eating better, it wasn't that big a sacrifice, drinking a little more water, just some organization in their life. They couldn't tell you where the EpiPen was or the inhaler, and their kids hadn't been anywhere, like an attack. And I said, that makes sense. They fed the body, and the body responded and healed itself. If you give what was on this earth already and put it in correctly, I say, you need to eat plants, not from a plant, like a factory plant. And so I started doing that. I listened to the show, I went and met the people, and then ultimately we opened our first supplement store, and we took over their radio show. I got TV appearances every month on the local Fox affiliate. I went back to college and enrolled in Trinity School of Natural Health and got my doctorate in naturopathy. And here I am 30 years later.
Then he came to FreshAnointing. So this Sunday, our fast ends. Technically Monday, but we're going to go ahead and do it Sunday. So for 90 days, a number of people have been exploring plant-based eating, no meats, no sweets. And it's a terrifying thought that some people are so proud of themselves for what they've done for 90 days. And they can't wait to get back to the things that they've missed for these 90 days. So there's this kind of mindset that moderation is okay. I believe moderation kills, or can kill.
Right.
Can you speak to that for a minute?
Well, it's like sin. It's when you open that door.
Come on, Reverend.
What happens?
Yeah.
So, you know, stressing what they've gained. So if they, you know, it's hard to say, but if they've lost weight and if they've, you know, can do more physical activity, they can be a better servant for God.
Yeah. And we're going to do that, and we're going to stress what they've gained. But I just want you to talk about the whole moderation thing, just literally from a health standpoint. So, for example, you've probably seen people that did well for 6 months, decided to go on a cruise or whatever, and just say, during this vacation, I'm going to enjoy myself. And then, so I just wanted you to talk about how moderation is not as moderate as we think it is, if that's what you actually feel.
So then it's the quality of the foods. So if you're going to have the meat and the fish, you don't want the fish to be Captain D's chicken. I mean, you know, you don't want it's a really cheap fried fish. You want wild caught salmon. You know, if it's going to be a steak, it's going to be a farm. You know, where you went and, you know, knew the grass fed. You knew there was quality to it, and there was the portion size. So it's going way off the reservation, if you will, and going to an all-you-can-eat buffet and getting, you know, and it's all processed foods. It's understanding the quality. So I still believe people, particularly blood type O's, need some animal protein.
Yeah.
But
we're not saying everybody should stay plant-based. Go ahead.
Yes, but the plants have, and the application, and there's kind of a washout period. But it's once you start to migrate very far off of the quality and the standard and the volume of vegetables, different health diseases. I mean, it's called the SAD diet. The standard American diet is what keeps everybody with heart disease, obesity, and diabetes. So staying away from those, treat them like they really are as the enemy to your health. And you know, it's predominantly a vegetable, and when you have those meats, the quality is really important.
Okay. So I guess the best thing for people to do is decide now before they get there what their boundaries are going to be. If they're deciding to go back into protein, they make up their mind how they're going to do it, because it's, you know, if you used to eat your ribs with macaroni and cheese and with this and that, you know, so now it's very easy to just kind of go back into all the old ways. But I think if people would make up their mind now, set boundaries now as to what they'll allow and not allow, and still do that in community. And I'm assuming, come see you at the herb shop and all that good stuff, that they'll have a good chance of maintaining what they've started. Would you say so?
Right, and just staying, yeah, there's so many foods. I guess they need to learn the benefits of the vegetable diet and understand that more. But it wasn't just so much, I guess it's the damages of a processed food diet. And so I'm not saying...
Yes,
and
I'm more afraid of the processed food diet than I am a little bit of protein here and there. So I think we're speaking the same thing.
It's the over-processed foods. So back in the 1910, 20, people were mostly farmers. They would take, a little general store would have a bag of grain, and there would be a grain grinder, and when people wanted flour, they got flour, a pound or 5 pounds right then. And they had to use it within so many days or it would go rancid, because the natural vitamin E that was in the grain was an oil, so it's a fat-soluble vitamin. So when they realized that with population growth and urbanization, they needed to make flour last longer. So they started processing it, and eventually they processed it into what we think of today as white flour. But in the 1920s and 30s, it was literally just white flour, and it was so void of nutrition, and a lot of B vitamins are in the grain. And there was they built sanitariums for mental institutions because beriberi is a type of mental disorder that occurs because of people are so low on B vitamins. And so they learned that they needed to put nutrients back in. So it's estimated that the grain in the 1910s had almost 80 different nutrients in it. And they took all 80 of those out and went like 20 years with no nutrition. Then in the 30s or the 40s, they started putting nutrition back in, but they only put in about a dozen nutrients. So it's kind of what we jokingly say, if you had $80 and somebody took all of it and gave you 12 back and said, now you're enriched, you're not exactly enriched. So that's what they've done with our grain, is they've taken 80 things out and given you 12 back and made them kind of mutant things back and call it enriched. So it's still missing a lot of key parts. So that's just like the mac and cheese.
Stay away from the processed stuff. Eat what God made from plants, and if you want to eat animal protein, eat the best. And if we do that, we shall do well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So caveman diet kind of, or the grains and the grasses or the lettuces or the vegetables, but the processing. And you have to recognize where processing is everywhere in the American culture. So if you mention ribs and it's going to have barbecue sauce or glaze, it's not just the meat. So it's the sauces are a real problem because they're like concentrated chemicals. I mean, it's flavoring.
Who's that foaming at the mouth? I was feeling something. I'm sorry. Joking. Carl, thank you so much. You've done 4 weeks, has it been?
This is just 3. There was a week I
third
didn't.
week, that's right. We had a week we didn't do it. Thank you so much for taking time
Yes.
out. We so appreciate you. It's not your first time here. You've done this over the years, and we value it. Are we grateful, team? Once again, thank you. Thank you. So let's pray for him. Let's just do that. Since he came to Fresh, we always pray for. Just stretch your hands out. Father, we thank you for Carl. Thank you for the number of people that he's helping. Thank you for those who he's providing awakening and insight and information. Continue to bless his business. Continue to increase him. Continue to give him greater favor and greater notability and viability, God, that many, many more would know him. Thank you for the new location that's just come about, Lord, that battle that you've given victory in. So we just ask, Lord, that he would just continue to stay well and sharp and vibrant many, many years to come. For, Lord, we need him, and we need many more like him. So bless him, his practice, his family, and all that he put his hands to. We decree and declare it is blessed. And Father, I pray for those who have been here every single Wednesday. Give them strength and grace. Cause all this information to really settle in their spirit, Lord. Let the water be turned into wine. Let it become reality in our souls, in our mind, in our heart. And give us the discipline and grace and desire to be in a new lifestyle until the day we see your face. Lord, we don't want to serve you with racked bodies and devastating bodies. We want to have the energy to give you the best body we can. So give us all the grace to do it. Thank you, God, for Miss Charlotte and Janice, who have worked so diligently putting these Wednesdays together. God, continue to increase them, bless them beyond their imagination. Meet the very desires of their heart and reward them for all that they've done. And we commit this 90 days into your hands, God. Bless it in a way we can't even vocalize right now, not only for us, but for all who have partaken of it. We look forward, God, to more that you have in store for us. We thank you and give you praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen and amen. So how many pounds have we lost in here, just in here? How many? 14, 15, 11, 8, 31. Wow. Amazing. Look at God. I won't go back to the ways. Yes. Come on. And here's what's so amazing about your analogy. Sugar is actually more addictive than crack, literally. So it really is. And so, all right. Any other questions while Carl's packing up? And yes. Yes. I'm confused. Sorry. Future topics. They want to know from me? Oh, 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 from them? Yeah. Go for it. Handle that. You need this? Or you good?